The night Sophie Hale stood in my kitchen and whispered, "No one wants me." She was barefoot, exhausted, and holding herself together with the kind of control that usually breaks all at once. What happened after that changed both our lives. But to explain it properly, I have to start a little earlier, back when she first came home. My name is Noah Bennett. I'm 34 and I run a small custom furniture and restoration shop in Asheville, North Carolina. Most of my days are simple: sawdust, measurements, coffee that gets cold too fast, clients who say they want rustic and then panic when wood looks like wood. It's a quiet life, predictable, solid, which is probably why Sophie's return hit me as hard as it did. I'd known her since we were 13. Same street, same school, same bad summer jobs. She was my little sister Rachel's best friend first, then mine by default, then mine by choice. Sophie had always been the loudest laugh in the room, the girl who talked with her whole face, who stole fries off your plate and then told you your taste in music was embarrassing. At 26, she moved to Charlotte, got into marketing, got engaged to a man named Carter who wore expensive watches, and the expression of someone permanently impressed with himself. At 33, she came back home alone. I found that out on a Thursday morning because Rachel called me before 8 and said, "Don't say anything stupid when you see her." That's a weirdly specific warning. She's staying at her mom's place for a while. Okay, Noah. Rachel's voice changed a little. She had surgery and Carter's gone. That got my attention. What kind of surgery? Rachel hesitated. Breast cancer, they caught it early, but it was rough. She doesn't want everyone knowing details, so keep your mouth shut and just be normal. Be normal. People say that like it's simple. It isn't. When the girl you used to know by the sound of her laugh comes back, carrying something heavy enough to bend the air around her. I saw Sophie that afternoon outside her mother's house, standing beside an open SUV with two cardboard boxes in her arms. Her hair, once dark and halfway down her back, was now a soft, short crop just past her ears. Beautiful, still, just different. She looked thinner too, sharper around the shoulders, and there was a caution in her face I had never seen before. She spotted me walking up the driveway and gave me a smile so practiced it hurt. "Hey, Bennett." There she was, still calling me by my last name like we were 17. I took the boxes from her before she could protest. "Hey, yourself. They warned me you lived next door to adulthood now." "I don't. I rent a room from it." That got a real smile. Small but real. Good, I'd take it. Inside the house, everything smelled faintly like cardboard and lemon cleaner. She had clearly only unpacked the basics: a lamp in the corner, a half-empty mug on the counter, pill bottles near the sink, lined up with the kind of precision that says a person is trying very hard not to fall behind. I set the boxes down and asked, "Need help with the rest?" "I can manage." Not what I asked. Her eyes flicked to mine, measuring. Then she said, "Maybe with the bookshelf." The bookshelf turned into the couch turned into two kitchen chairs she pretended she could lift by herself. An hour later, I was opening a stubborn window in the guest room while Sophie stood behind me giving deeply unhelpful commentary. "You always liked feeling useful." "I am useful." "You're bossy." "You're welcome." That earned another small smile. By the time I left, she was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by framed photos she hadn't decided whether to keep out or put away. One of them was from her engagement shoot. I knew because Carter was in it, smiling like a man advertising cufflinks. Sophie turned the frame face down the second she noticed me looking. I pretended not to notice that. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw her more than I had in years. At first because Rachel dragged me into it. "Go check her porch light. Carry this inside for her. She needs someone to pick up mulch." Very subtle, but after a while Rachel didn't have to ask. Sophie started coming by the shop with coffee. I started fixing small things around the house she claimed she could do herself. We slipped into a rhythm too easily, which should have worried me more than it did. She was still funny, still sharp, still capable of insulting me in complete sentences while handing me a blueberry muffin she'd baked that morning. But there were fractures now. She flinched when people asked casual questions like, "So how long are you in town?" She wore loose tops even when the weather was warm. She never changed clothes around the windows. And every time her phone lit up with Carter's name in an old email thread she hadn't deleted yet, a little piece of her face shut down. I didn't push, not because I didn't want to know, because I wanted her to tell me when it felt like hers to tell. That moment came on a Sunday night. Rachel was out with friends. I was closing up the shop when I saw Sophie sitting alone on the back steps of her mother's porch, one knee pulled up, a blanket around her shoulders even though it wasn't cold enough to need one. She looked up when I came through the gate. "Do you have wine?" she asked. "That bad?" She gave a brittle laugh. "That obvious?" I came back 10 minutes later with a bottle, two mismatched glasses, and the very strong feeling that whatever she was about to say mattered more than either of us was pretending. She took one sip, stared out into the dark yard, and said, "Can I ask you something, and will you promise not to answer, like someone trying to be kind?" I leaned against the porch rail and looked at her. When have I ever been that disciplined? That pulled a softer laugh out of her, but it disappeared fast. Then she set the glass down, wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, and said very quietly, "When you look at me now, Noah, what do you see?" That question was a trap. Not because Sophie meant it that way, because there was no answer simple enough to survive what she was really asking. She wasn't asking if her hair looked different. She wasn't asking if she seemed tired. She was asking whether whatever had happened to her had become the first thing anyone noticed now. So, I didn't answer fast. That mattered. People answer too fast when they want to sound noble. I looked at her properly, bare feet tucked under the blanket, short hair catching the porch light, one hand wrapped around the wine glass she wasn't really drinking, eyes fixed on me like she was bracing for a kindness that would hurt worse than honesty. "I see, Sophie," I said. Her face tightened. "That's not an answer." "It is." "No." She looked away. "That's what people say when they don't want to say the real thing." I sat down on the step below her, leaving space between us. "Then the real thing is this. I see someone who came home after the worst year of her life and still found a way to make fun of my toolbox organization." She gave one breath of a laugh, barely. But it was there. I see someone who pretends she doesn't need help with furniture and then stands there supervising like a tiny, judgmental foreman. I see someone who still knows exactly how to make my sister cry, laughing in under 30 seconds. I looked at her. "And yes, I see that you're tired. And yes, I see that something hurt you badly. But I don't look at you and see damage first." Her eyes stayed on the yard. For a while, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Carter did." There it was, the name we had all been walking around like broken glass. I didn't move. Sophie looked down at her hands. "Not at first. At first he was perfect. Flowers, appointments. We'll get through this." All the right sentences. Her mouth twisted. He was very good at the announcement version of loyalty. That sentence hit harder than it should have. And then it got real. She kept her voice even, which somehow made it worse. "Recovery wasn't pretty. I wasn't fun. I wasn't easy. I didn't look the way he wanted me to look. I didn't have the energy to make him feel heroic for staying." My jaw tightened before I could stop it. Sophie noticed. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Look like you want to hit him with lumber." "I work with lumber. It's just professional association." That got her again, a small laugh through the ache. "Good. I would take every one of those I could get." Then she said quieter, "He didn't leave all at once. That would have been cleaner. He just started becoming busy, then careful, then distant. And one night I heard him on the phone telling his brother he felt trapped." I stared at the porch boards, not because I didn't want to look at her, because if I looked at her too fast, I was afraid my anger would take up too much room. Sophie deserved something better than my anger. "He said he didn't know how to want me anymore," she said. The words came out controlled, too controlled, like she had repeated them in her head enough times that they had turned from a wound into a fact. I finally looked at her. "That's on him." She smiled faintly. "That's the kind answer." "No, that's the accurate one." "Maybe." She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. But accuracy doesn't fix what it does to you when the person who promised forever starts looking at you like you became an obligation. The porch went quiet. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once. A car passed slowly. Inside the house, the old refrigerator hummed like the world had no idea a person could be sitting 10 feet away trying not to fall apart. I wanted to say 100 things. That he was weak. That she deserved better. That none of what happened made her less herself. All true. None enough. So I said, "Sophie, I'm not Carter." She looked at me then. Really looked. "I know," she said. "That's the problem." The air shifted. Not romantically, exactly. More dangerously than that. Because there was something in her face now that wasn't only pain. It was fear of wanting comfort from the wrong person. Or maybe fear that it wasn't wrong at all. I stood before I could overthink it. "Come on," she frowned. "Where?" "My kitchen. You're cold. You haven't eaten enough. And porch confessions are terrible for circulation. That is the least poetic rescue I've ever heard." "Good. I'm trying to keep the bar low." She rolled her eyes, but she stood. 10 minutes later, she was sitting at my kitchen island wrapped in the same blanket while I made grilled cheese like it was an emergency procedure. She watched me with tired amusement. "You always feed people when you're scared." "I am not scared." "Noah, I am appropriately concerned." "That sounds like furniture store legal language." I set the plate in front of her. "Eat." She took one bite, closed her eyes for half a second, and said, "I hate that this is good. I'm gifted with bread and panic." For a little while, we managed ordinary. That helped. She ate half the sandwich, then the other half, then sat back, calmer, but still carrying something under her ribs that hadn't been said yet. I washed the pan. She stared at the counter, then she said, "Can I show you something?" The way she asked made me turn off the water immediately. "You don't have to." "I know. I mean that." "I know," she repeated. "That's why I'm asking you." I dried my hands slowly and turned around. Sophie stood near the island now, blanket slipping from one shoulder. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady in the bravest, saddest way. She lifted the edge of her loose shirt just enough to show me the place where her body had changed. Not for drama, not for pity, for truth. I did not look long. I looked enough to understand what trust had just cost her. Then I looked back at her face. Always her face. Her mouth trembled once before she controlled it, and in a voice so small it barely reached me, Sophie whispered, "No one wants me." I didn't move at first, not because I didn't want to, because I understood, all at once, that this was one of those moments a person could ruin by being too quick. Too quick to reassure, too quick to look away, too quick to say the easy, noble thing that sounds beautiful and feels empty. Sophie stood in my kitchen with the hem of her shirt still lifted just enough to show me the truth she had been carrying like a verdict. I looked at her face. Always her face. Her eyes were wet now, but she was forcing herself not to cry, like even breaking had to be done politely. "No one wants me," she whispered again, smaller this time, like saying it once had hurt and saying it twice might make it permanent. I stepped closer, slowly. Not enough to crowd her, not enough to make her feel trapped, just enough that she knew I wasn't leaving the room. Then I said, "I do." She froze. The shirt slipped from her hand and fell back into place. For a second, neither of us breathed properly. Sophie stared at me like I had spoken a language she was afraid to understand. "Noah, I do," I said again, quieter now. "And I need you to hear me correctly. Not because I feel sorry for you. Not because I'm trying to rescue you from one terrible sentence Carter left behind." I held her gaze. "I want you, the real you, the tired you, the furious you. The woman who supervises my grilled cheese like a city inspector. The woman who came back different and somehow still walks into a room like she belongs there." Her face crumpled a little at the edges. Not fully, just enough that I knew the words had gotten past the armor. "You don't have to say that," she whispered. "I know. No, I mean it. You don't have to make this better." "I'm not making it better." I took one more step, still leaving space. I'm telling you the truth. She shook her head once, almost angry now, but not at me, at Hope, at the danger of wanting to believe anything kind after someone had trained her to distrust it. You haven't seen all of it, she said. I don't need an inventory to know who I'm talking to. That stopped her. Hard. I softened my voice. Sophie, your body went through something brutal. That doesn't make it a warning label. It doesn't make you less wanted. It doesn't make you less a woman. And it sure as hell doesn't give Carter the right to become the voice you measure yourself by. She looked away then. A tear finally slipped, and she wiped it fast, almost irritated with it. I hate that I still hear him, she said. I know. I hate that I can be fine for hours and then one mirror, one shirt, one stupid memory, and suddenly I'm right back there. Her voice shook, back to watching his face change. That broke something in me, not loudly, just enough. I reached for her hand, palm up, giving her the choice. She looked at it. Then, after a long second, she put her hand in mine. Her fingers were cold. I wrapped both hands around hers and said, Then let's make a new memory. Her eyes lifted to mine. What? Not everything. Not tonight. Just this. I squeezed her hand lightly. You showed me something you were terrified to show anyone. And I'm still here. That's the memory. She stared at me. Then she let out one tiny, broken laugh that turned into a sob before she could stop it. I didn't pull her in immediately. I waited. When she stepped forward first, I held her. Carefully. Firmly. Like she was not fragile, but she was precious. There's a difference. She buried her face against my chest and finally cried the way people cry when they've been holding back for months because they thought falling apart would make them too much. I rested my cheek lightly against her hair and said nothing for a while. Because some things don't need speeches, they need someone staying. After a few minutes, she pulled back, embarrassed. I'm sorry. No. I got your shirt wet. It has survived worse. What, sawdust? Sawdust. Coffee. One incident with wood stain we don't discuss. That got a weak laugh out of her. Good. I would take everyone I could get. She wiped her face with the sleeve of the blanket and looked around my kitchen like she was trying to return to ordinary objects before the moment became too big to survive. Then she said, I should go home. You can. But I don't think you want to. She looked at me, caught. I was right. I don't want to be alone tonight, she admitted. That was the bravest thing she'd said. More than the rest, somehow. I nodded toward the hallway. Guest room's made up. Her eyes searched mine. You're not going to make this weird? I make no promises about my breakfast skills, emotionally, no. A small smile. Real this time. She slept in the guest room with my sister's old quilt and the door half open. I stayed on the couch, awake longer than I should have been, listening to the house settle and thinking about the fact that a woman had trusted me with the exact place someone else had made her feel unwanted. By morning, everything would have to be gentler, more careful, more honest. Because once you tell someone I do in the middle of their worst fear, you don't get to pretend it was just comfort. And I didn't want to. Morning came quietly. No dramatic sunrise, no music, just pale light through the blinds, the smell of coffee, and Sophie standing in my hallway wearing one of my old sweatshirts over her pajama shorts, looking like someone who had slept better than she expected and worse than she needed. I was at the stove trying not to burn eggs. She leaned against the doorframe and said, You cook like you're negotiating with the pan. I'm winning. You are absolutely not. That was the first good thing, not the eggs. Those were questionable. Her voice. A little rough, a little tired, but hers again. She sat at the kitchen island while I put a plate in front of her. For a few minutes, we stayed in safe territory. Coffee, toast, my terrible eggs, her mother's porch light, Rachel's habit of sending 3 texts where one would do. Then Sophie set her fork down. I remember everything, she said. I turned off the stove. Okay, she looked at me. That's all you're going to say? That depends what you need me to say. Her mouth trembled into a small smile, but it didn't last. I need to know if you meant it. I didn't pretend not to understand. Yes, I said. She looked down at her hands. The part where you said you wanted me? Yes. The part where you said it wasn't pity? Yes. The part where you said I'm not less of a woman? I stepped around the counter slowly, stopped near her, and waited until she looked at me. Especially that part. Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't look ashamed of it. That felt like progress. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. Noah, I'm really scared. Because if I let myself believe you, and then one day you look at me differently, I can't promise I'll never make a mistake, I said gently. But I can promise I won't lie to you to make myself seem better. I want to know you. I want to be with you. And I'm not asking you to become some old version of yourself for that to be true. She closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, something had softened, not healed. Healing is slower than that, but softened. Can we go slow? She asked. I smiled. Sophie, I run a furniture shop. Slow is basically my brand. That got a real laugh out of her. The kind I remembered. The kind that made the whole kitchen feel warmer. So we went slow. The first week, nothing officially changed except everything. She came by the shop with coffee. I walked her home at night. We talked more honestly than we ever had as kids and somehow less carefully than we had as adults. 2 weeks later, I took her on a real date. Not because we needed ceremony, but because she deserved to be wanted in daylight. I picked her up at 7, brought flowers because Rachel threatened me if I didn't, and took her to a small Italian place where nobody knew our history and nobody looked at her like she had survived something. They just saw Sophie, which was the point. After dinner, we walked by the river. She was quiet for a while, then slipped her hand into mine like she was making a decision out loud. I kept waiting to feel broken tonight, she said. And? She looked up at me. Mostly I just felt nervous because I liked you too much. That sentence undid me more than any perfect confession could have. I stopped walking. She stopped too. For once, neither of us made a joke. I touched her face, waited for the tiniest nod, and then I kissed her. Softly, carefully. Not like I was proving desire. Not like I was trying to erase the past. Just like I had finally been given permission to meet her in the present and wanted to do it right. When we pulled apart, she was crying again, but smiling this time. That was different, she whispered. Good different? She nodded. New memory different. That became our phrase after that. New memory. The first time she wore a fitted dress again, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The first time she let me photograph her laughing in the shop doorway. The first morning she woke up at my place, stole my sweatshirt, and said, I'm keeping this, emotionally and legally. 6 months later, Carter tried to call. She looked at the phone, watched it ring once, and handed it to me. Not because she needed me to answer, but because she didn't need to anymore. Then she declined the call herself. Afterward, she said, I think I just chose my own voice over his. I kissed her forehead and said, About time. A year later, we moved into a small house with a crooked porch and a kitchen she claimed had deeply repairable energy. I built her a reading bench under the front window. She painted the room yellow, even though I warned her it was a bold decision. She said bold decisions had been working out for her lately. 2 years later, I proposed in that same kitchen. No crowd, no staged surprise. Just Sophie barefoot, making pancakes badly, and me realizing I didn't want a single ordinary morning without her in it. She said yes before I finished, then made me finish anyway because, according to her, a woman deserves the full speech. She did, so I gave it to her. We got married in my sister's backyard under string lights, with Rachel crying loudly enough to embarrass herself and Sophie laughing through her vows because happiness still startled her sometimes. And the best part was not that she became the old Sophie again. She didn't. She became someone deeper, funnier in quieter ways, softer with herself, fiercer about small joys, and a woman who had been hurt, yes, but not reduced. Never reduced. Years later, when people asked when I knew I loved her, I never mentioned the wedding or the first kiss or the first date. I thought about my kitchen. about her standing there terrified of being unwanted, about the moment I stepped closer and told the truth. Because that was where our life really began. What would you have done if someone you cared about stood in your kitchen, showed you the part of herself she was most afraid to be rejected for, and whispered, "No one wants me"? And have you ever had to learn that you were still worthy of love after someone made you doubt it? Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.